What is up, everybody? Welcome to the opening break. My name is Ashes. I am the coach for Complexity Halo, as well as the director of talent here at Complexity. And with me, I have the best co-host I could possibly ask for. Go ahead and let them know who you are.
That's good. It's Hunter JJX. Stoked to be here. Content creator with Complexity, obviously 4 years running. Pretty stoked, Nick. I mean, we talked about this for a little bit, getting together, chatting Halo, just creating more content in the space. And I couldn't pick a better duo to do it with, honestly.
Yeah, I am. I'm stoked because, like you said, we've talked about doing this for what, a year at least, maybe more. So it's time, man. It's time for us to, be able to just talk about this game that we love, that we're involved with so heavily in our careers. Before we get too far into Halo, though, I think you wanted to ask me a question, right?
Yeah. No, I feel like before we jump into something as heavy as Halo, we're very involved. It's something we take very seriously. We got to do a playlist check-in, Nick. So what you been listening to lately, bro? What bands are you into? I know you and I got similar tastes, so hit me with it.
Oh, you know me. When it comes to music, let's see. I'm looking over at the Spotify monitor. I've been listening to Volbeat lately. I've been on my old man metal grind a little bit, but the new Architects album, stoked about that. New Sleep Token stuff may be coming soon. Stoked about that. How about you?
Dude, I was gonna say I haven't even gotten a chance to check in with the new Spirit Box yet because the Architects album was so good. Like I was not expecting the new Architects record to be as good as it is. I mean, they're sick, but like I don't know. I feel like they really crushed it, and it's been a little while since like a album has like grabbed me. You know, it is like nowadays everyone's doing like the singles or whatever. But every so often like a good album will hit. I think last year it was like Bill Murray for me. This Architects record is like hitting the spot for me right now. So that's been pretty sick. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like you and I once again synced up per usual on that. Obviously excited for the new Sleep Token, but we're gonna jump in talking Halo. We've had 2 open qualifiers, obviously. A lot to cover top to bottom, but Nick, let's get a vibe check on the team, how everyone's feeling. Where's the morale at right now?
Yeah, so it's definitely been, I want to say, not what we expected for Complexity Halo. We'll start with Complexity Halo, right? Like,
I feel like we should get out of the way, right? Because then it frees us up to talk everything else.
Exactly. So get all the bias out of the way, right? Like, obviously, we're going to talk about the best team first, and then we'll, go on to all the others. Complexity Halo. Obviously, I'm still stoked about this roster. This roster has an incredibly high ceiling, so there's a ton of potential there with all of the players individually. For those of you, if you're under a rock and you don't know, roster is Mental, Precision, my Gears boys, Huss, my COD kid, and then Spartan the Goat, aka Spartan the Dog, aka he's free at last. Ready to make that redemption arc both with us and with HCS, and just show that he's championship material. And I think that's kind of the theme of this whole team, is like everybody feels like they have that championship material vibe, and it's a matter of putting together that chemistry that they all have out of game and making that work in game. So we've had kind of a slow start to the season. Our scrims were looking really good. We felt like we were getting into a really good place where we were going to be able to achieve what we wanted to achieve in these first 2 opens. We were doing well in scrims against, Space Station and basically all the top teams. And we've had this kind of fluke that we're working on figuring out, where just playstyles aren't quite aligning, especially when there's a lot of pressure. And I don't want to, go too deep into it because I don't want to like give away our weaknesses, obviously, even though it won't be a weakness for much longer. But that's kind of where our focus is just figuring out those ways to find ourselves in sync when the pressure's on. Because those top teams, you guys know, like your Shopify's, your Optics, like all of those like God squads, right? They're going to keep that pressure on you nonstop, like Space Station did last year. And when that pressure is on you, it makes it really hard to read the map because you're constantly fighting for your life. And a lot of players struggle with that ability to like fight what's on their screen, shoot back, while also read the map and figure out what the right play is, what the next play is. A Complexity alumni, Ryan Noob, that's something I'll give him a tremendous amount of credit for. He was phenomenal at that last year. So with this team, it's just kind of figuring that out and getting everybody in sync naturally and working towards the same objectives. That way, all of that strength that we have, all that firing power that we have, all of those individual like quirks that make each player unique and powerful on the map can be all utilized towards the same goal, rather than just like, well, this guy's on an island right here and he's, precision can do a lot of damage, but if he's in a 1v3, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So,
it's like the difference between playing proactive Halo and reactive Halo, right? Like if you're always on the back foot without like a game plan, you kind of end up just playing reactive. Like you just kind of playing the way the other team wants you to. Exactly. Whereas like what separates the top teams is being able to make the right read and the right play while under pressure, while at a disadvantage. That's like a huge deal. And I would agree where it's like our team obviously has shown that we have a floor that we're not too stoked on, but like we know what we need to work on and improve, which will, it's nice when you have things you can acknowledge, like, okay, here's a hole in our game. We need to up our game here. We need to improve here. So that being said, though, I think our team has an insanely high ceiling. One of the things that I've been looking out for a lot of these teams, especially as I start making my LAN predictions, is like what teams have an edge, you know what I mean, for a reason. Like, so for example, right now, I feel like Shopify has a huge edge because a lot of those players kind of were left behind by their boys and stuff, you know what I mean? But I think for us, dude, like Sparty, for example, it's like full on Sparty revenge tour, right? Like he's trying to establish to like, hey, like, don't forget about me. Like, I know I couldn't play at the last few events, but like, I'm still here. I'm a menace. And you look at Mental, he got dropped by like 16 teams in a row. You know what I mean? Like he just like, he was like pinball bumpering, getting bounced all around, between obviously Shopify and then TSM. And now he's here with us and we couldn't be more stoked. But that, all that stuff gives edge. It gives like, we want our players to play with anger. And I think that gives us like a really high ceiling, like I said, because a passionate, angry Sparty is nasty. You know what I mean? A lot of players, either rise or fall depending on their emotional state. But Sparty definitely gets fueled up by, being mad or whatnot. So, I'm looking forward to it. What teams have like, hey, sorry, I got a little visitor.
We got the third host of the podcast or the show.
What teams do you have? So we talked about complexity. Our team, obviously, we're looking to do a lot better. We're looking to up our placement, up our seed, really huge going on the first LAN. On the other side of things, what teams have like shocked you so far? What teams do you think have overperformed, or what teams do you think are legitimately that good?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some teams that are maybe weren't part of the conversation going into or coming out of Roster Mania that have really kind of shown through. I would say week 1, Triggers Down really impressed me. That's the roster of Descendant, aka former Complexity member, Ezo, who we brought with him from Dark Inside, and then Collect has joined, and they're fourth. Who's their fourth?
It wasn't Ryan, because Ryan got traded out for who was the player they traded him out for? Let me pull it up.
They just picked up Lethal. I don't remember if that was who they played with week 1 though. Yeah. So right now it's Lethal, Collect, Descendant, and Ezo. And I think in week 1, I don't remember if that was their roster week 1, but assuming it was, whoever the roster was for that team caught me by surprise. They came out really strong in week 1, but I think the bigger dark horse or Cinderella story right now is probably the new Luminosity roster. I think that team we've played them both weeks. we jokingly in our team chats call them like the Grim Reapers, because like on paper you don't expect that roster to pull up the way it does. No disrespect to them, right? Like incredibly talented team. It's Piggy, it's Avuchi, it's Yaxon, and their fourth is, I'm drawing a blank on this one too. I'm just going to pull it up because I have it in front of me. Mortally.
I just had it pulled up. Yeah, Mortally.
So like on paper, right? Like those are all names that we've seen. That's a lot of young up and coming talent with Avuchi and Yaxon. Like that roster, it makes sense. It just doesn't feel like it has enough experience under its belt to play the way it's been playing. But even like we've lost to them 2 weeks in a row, unfortunately. And last week, like after we lost to them, I'm going through and I'm watching back all the maps, and like the plays that they're making and the speed at which they're deciding to make these plays, it's like veteran level stuff. So
yeah. With that Luminosity squad, like what I noticed right off the rip when they kind of put that squad together is like they've got a squad that's 4 players of like ultimate confidence. Like all 4 of those dudes are like play with a chip on their shoulder, but they also like legitimately think they're the best in the world. Like they think nobody can gun with them, and like, and you know, to their like their credit, their gameplay is lining up with that. It's like matching up with that. Like, and I think that you do kind of have to have like a suicidal, psychotic belief in yourself to be the best in the world. Like a lot of times you believe it before you actually are. But you know, when I was talking about teams with chips on their shoulder, I mean, Piggy almost didn't have a roster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's like one of the best players in the game. If anybody that like knows high level, big picture Halo, you watch his screen, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes in game. Like he really knows how to play with pace. He's got gears to his game. He can play fast. He can play slow. He can fill whatever role in the spawn cycle he needs to be. So he's really sick. I mean, Yaxon and Mortally both are like just straight shooters, dude. Like those guys are unbelievable. So they're like one of those teams where I'm glad you brought them up because you can't sleep on them. Like you come out flat-footed against a team like that, they're just going to run circles around you because they're ready to go. For me though, the team that we got to talk about is Shopify, dude. I mean, what a come up, turn around for that organization, right? Like they spent like a couple of years floundering trying to find their way, and it's like year 4 and they couldn't be in a better situation, you know?
Yeah, they're definitely finding themselves, you know, kind of king of the hill right now. It's kind of the back and forth between them and Optic, and I think those are really the only two teams at the current moment that can beat each other. And that's what we've seen in the opens, right? HCS Open 1, we saw Optic take it. HCS, the most recent one, Open 2, we saw Shopify take it. And I think that back and forth is going to be a consistent story going into the first major because they're just at the top right now. I would say personally, I think they're probably the two best teams coming out of Roster Mania in terms of just like the rosters that they assembled. And again, I'm putting personal bias of Complexity Halo out the window. So if we're including that, they're the second and third best teams out of, but yeah, Optic and Shopify are like the cream of the crop right now. And I think that, yeah, I mean, Shopify is such an interesting story because it's got Cycle, it's got Last Shot, who are like supposed to be the young guns, like that firepower. And you and I have talked about that too. Like as we've had different iterations of Complexity Halo rosters, like I want that young talent mixed with that veteran leadership. And that's kind of what Shopify has put together. They have the young talent of Cycle and Last Shot with the veteran leadership that Royal 2 and that Frosty can bring. And Frosty also can shoot like he's still a young gun. So
I was gonna say the problem is their veterans are still like absolutely in their prime, like not missing a bullet. Like the clip that's circling right now where Royal 2 like dancing on the pillar on bottom A and recharge. He literally just like breaking ankles. I'm like, dude, how old is this guy? I feel like I've been watching Royal 2 dominate maps, like, I mean, since Reach now. So, dude, a long time, to still be on top of their game. But dude, by far the angriest team. I feel like if you really like, if we had like an anger scale of like, who's got to be the hottest, like I feel like Royal 2 and Frosty are both like, hold on a second, like who forgot, like everyone forgot about us, like like everyone's talking about Optic and SSG, like do you guys forget like what they left? And to build that roster, like you said, with, in my opinion, the two best players to come out of Infinite, which is Cycle and Last Shot. Like if you really look at players that made their breakthrough, it's hard to list more people than that. I mean, they've had a massive impact on the scene. So, but you know how it is, dude. Like, it's harder to go somewhere for the first time versus to go to somewhere you've been. Like when it comes to winning a championship, obviously Royal 2 and Frosty have been there, done that. They know what it takes. But I think there is going to be a little bit of that like hill to climb for the youngsters to finally be in that position, in a grand finals on land and see how they respond.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Cycle is still part of that Shopify roster that basically didn't show up on Sundays last season. So, and that's like, again, no, I'm not saying that is Cycle's fault. I'm not saying that is, anybody's fault. My teammate is also part of that, right? And mental, but it's still a factor. And I think going into the season, it's going to be interesting to see how Arlington plays out, because obviously Shopify is going to do really well online. And we know that Cycle can do really well on land. We know that Last Shot can, I mean, I don't want to say he hard carried, but like,
yeah, dude, the stats speak for themselves.
Yeah, like I'm sure everybody on Pure played a part in their success last season, but like Last Shot was him and a half. So I think that you have the players there. Obviously, Royal 2 and Frosty know how to win on Sundays, which is really important. Can that translate into building up that confidence and maybe removing any doubt that Cycle might have going into a Sunday at Arlington.
Well, let's put something on right now. Are you saying yay or nay? Is Shopify winning an event this season online?
I mean, not if I have anything to do with it. Like if we have a say in it, like what? No, they're not winning an event. Screw that.
Yeah.
But
all right, well, you can be the no. I'll be the yes. I think they do win. I think they win one. I think. Who knows? I thought they would jump out early on because of the extra practice and maybe snag a win in one of the first majors, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if the major is next weekend, right? Like I would say that they can win it. I think that Optic. I think that Shopify has a chance to win it. Actually, I should say, I would predict Optic to win that matchup in the grand finals.
Yeah.
I think that Optic currently has much more Championship Sunday experience that is successful. Obviously, you can't knock Royal 2, you can't knock Frosty, but Cycle's experience was not being able to get a map. Last Shot's experience was, I don't know how many maps they took on Sundays, but I can't imagine.
They went to game fives a couple times. They went to game fives.
Okay, but like he also wasn't in every single Sunday where Cycle was.
Yeah.
So I think like even if Cycle is a really confident player and a really talented player, there's just something about what the lights do to you, and kind of that like feeling and that vibe and those memories that you get of like it's an extra pressure, right? Like he's sitting down on Sunday and he's like, all right, I'm going to get my first map. And maybe he like oversteps or tries too hard or makes a mistake because he's overcompensating for the fact that he hasn't done it on a Sunday, right? I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying like there's a lot of factors at play. Whereas Optic, it's like, Legend and Bound won 4 out of 5 events last season.
Yeah.
Like, what's like? Hold on, can we talk like
the one they lost was on an 8-hour time difference? Trying to like in another on the other side of the planet. Like I think 4 out of 5 is insane, dude.
Let's walk this back for a second though to Roster Mania. Like, why the hell did Space Station break up?
I mean, so there's like two things. There's two sides of it. There's like legacy, but there's also your brand. And the reality is like, yeah, they could have built a legacy at Space Station, and I'm sure they would have kept winning and maybe even swept a season or something. But when you look at your brand individually, like you go to Optic, you're kind of set for life. You would know, Nick. You went to Optic however long ago, and you've still been set for life. You know what I mean? It's like the optic juice is a real thing, and elevate wherever someone comes into Optic, it elevates them from there. Obviously, you took major leaps in industry, and for someone like Bound or Legend who are young, it's like, dude, getting a chance to rep Optic this early on in their careers, like it can only go up from there. You know what I mean? Like I saw the clips of Legend like beating up on what's his face in COD, and I was just like, dude, like what is going on? Like, you know what I mean? That
was nuts.
He's taking like full advantage of the opportunity, you know what I mean, and establishing himself as like, no, like I'm not just Optic Halo, like I am Optic, you know what I mean? And people are already talking about like, dude, like they got another Shotzi, like this kid could come over to COD and like dominate us anytime. Like they're all like shook by it, you know what I mean? Oh, it was Illy, him versus Illy. So I think that I think it's the long-term play to go to Optic. I think the short-term play would have been like, hey, I'm going to stay SSG and we're just going to keep dominating and winning here. But like, what's more than winning? Well, winning and making a brand that's going to last me the rest of my life. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of a huge deal. And yeah, I mean, Optic is green. It's funny though that like, because I was going to bring up Optic. Isn't it crazy to think that right now is like the worst version of this Optic team we're going to see, and they're still like in every grand finals have won, you know what I mean, like 1 or 2 already, and it's like this is the worst version of this team flat out, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, especially from like my perspective of like, okay, we gotta catch up and then surpass, right? And knowing that they're going to constantly improve, just like we're looking to constantly improve, that makes that a really big challenge. And it's, kind of my job as a coach to figure out like, okay, how do we do that? Like, how do we surpass that team that maybe they have more resources or maybe they have more time, like the players have more time on their hands to play the game and put in the hours. They're definitely getting more reps in these online cups than we are because they're staying in them longer. So it's definitely a interesting challenge that I'm up for, but it is kind of scary to think about. Like they're gonna constantly improve. I hope they hit a ceiling for me, for my sake. Makes my job a little bit easier. But I think I think no matter what, and this is just coming from like being on the other side of that, right? Like when you're at the top, it's really easy to lose that motivation. Like it feels so good to win an event, but you kind of get this ego of like, okay, maybe I can take the foot off the gas a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's going to happen with that team, but I think Formal's been around forever, won and everything. So like, I don't think that's a factor for him. But does that start to become a factor for the others? As like, if Bound and Legend win another event, it's like, okay, we're clearly the best. Maybe we can like back off a little bit and just like, stream COD or Warzone or like what, you know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah.
use this optic opportunity in other ways and maybe take our foot off the gas a little bit. Yeah, it's tough to think about. Same for Shopify too.
Yeah, I think like with Shopify, well, it comes down to this first LAN, dude. This first LAN's gonna be crazy. I think this first LAN, the first LAN, similarly to the first Open, the first LAN kind of sets the pace. So it either, like you said, could cause a team to take their foot off the gas, or it could cause a team to get real hungry. You know what I mean? Like if Optic goes to the grand finals and they lose like a heartbreaker to, let's say, Shopify, or even worse, if they lose to SSG, like God forbid, like that would be some pretty insane motivation. Whereas like if Optic goes and wins like handily and it's easy, then yeah, like how do you stay locked in? How do you stay like motivated to be on the grind, to be improving your game every day? And I think the reality is we've never seen a Halo game go to year 4, right? So like automatically I think we're going to see the most skilled version of Halo Infinite possible, and maybe Halo ever, seeing as they've had like 3+ years now to like hone their craft. So I feel like the individual talent at the highest level, like in the top 3, top 4, it kind of all just gets like flattened out in my opinion. Obviously everyone's going to have their moments and pop off, but then it comes down to like who has the better game plan, who has the better counterplay, who knows their opponent better, in this matchup, who knows how to counter, who knows what each player's tendency is going to be. You know what I mean? Lucid's last player alive, you got to be able to go into his head and be like, I know what Lucid wants to do in this situation. You have to do that for every single player. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I'm really excited to see like the head games that go into it. But man, I have Shopify winning an event this year. I have Optic, winning an event this year. I have SSG. I mean, I know they're playing catch up. They were on vacation the longest, but that team all put together is going to be insanely dangerous. You know what I mean? Like the level of IQ that they're coming with. And then we had the fourth team, I'm sure you want to talk about, but better. Like, I don't think anyone was expecting them to be in the position they're in so far.
Yeah, it's, we've given a lot of love to Shopify and to Optic. Space Station's an interesting one for me. And before we get into better, because when I saw this roster, like before it was announced, like obviously players talk, so we hear everything. And I saw this roster on paper and I'm like, first off, it's weird to think that this is the scraps. Like this is what like, Optic didn't want.
Yeah.
That's wild to think about when you look at a Lucid, you look at a Snakebite, you look at a Eco, like a Stellar, like it's just how, right? Like how did they make it through the draft unpicked? My concern with that team was that is, you look at the big 3 from last year in Optic, Space Station, FaZe, right? You take their 3 IGLs in Lucid and Snakebite and in Eco, and you put them together onto one team. Is that too many chefs in the kitchen? Right? It's like you've got one soldier in Stellar who can run around and do whatever he wants, but if he's getting told to play 3 different ways, like how do they blend those 3 play styles? Because those teams were very different on paper.
Yeah.
Like Optic was a controlled pace. FaZe was much more like they want the perfect setup before they start working towards that objective play. Like you saw that all the time in Oddball, right? Like they would often get like 3 or 4 rounds of slays before they're actually picking up the ball and racking up points because they're looking for that perfect moment. And then you have SSG, who is like anyone who played StarCraft, like they're literally Zerg. Like they're just constantly flooding you over and over off spawn, and they're so talented, they're killing 2 of you every time. So it's like you have 3 very different leadership or play styles, playbooks coming together under one roof. How does that work?
I think that's where a little bit of the learning curve is coming in with them. Why we've seen them kind of be a top 4 team, whereas a lot of us are expecting them to obviously be in that top 2 contention. I think, but I will say, I do think when they figured out it's going to be something special. I was playing with Snakebite the other day, and he was talking to a stream about how he believes, like in Infinite, especially in year 4, there shouldn't be a such thing as an IGL. You should be able to have any one person call the situation based on, you know, their perspective, because as one player you only have your one perspective of what's happening in the moment. And so to have multiple players that can all IGL can lead to a situation where in a perfect sense, whoever has the best view of the game state in that moment should be able to call, hey, this is what we need to do, we need to hit here. And in a even better than perfect sense, if they're all synced up, they're all making that, they're all coming to the same conclusion at the same time, and they don't even need to really like overthink it or you know, say what needs to happen. They're all just look at it and immediately like go after it, you know what I mean? So I definitely think, especially in Infinite, with how like damage based and like you know, we call it like room breaching simulator sometimes, like how damage based, how breachy the game can be. Like you need to be able to have players that on a dime can all switch into whatever role the situation calls for, you know what I mean? And so you know, I think a lot of the AMs through the years have always been like, well, that's an objective player, or he's a Slayer, or he's a power weapon guy, or this and that, or he's the IGL. And it's like, no, the best players in the world can be any one of those things depending on what the exact moment calls for. You know what I mean? And I think when I look at that SSG team, I see that. I see 4 players that are extremely fluid on what they can accomplish on the map. And then also, like, side note, you have Stellar and Lucid, who both on any given day you could tell me they're the best player in the entire game, and I'll be like, yeah, that checks out. You know what I mean? So it's not like they're lacking in talent, you know. And in that, there's like a special class of players. It's like your Renegade, Legend, Lucid, Stellar. I would even put Frosty in there. Some like there's times where like you look at him play and you're like, yeah, that's the best player in the world. Like, and there's no debate about it. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's not like they're lacking for talent. They just haven't fully synergized yet, but they also have the least amount of time playing together. They didn't even play in any like the preseason opens. You know what I mean? So
yeah, they have to play a little bit of catch up, I think, and that I think they have enough experience to where the catch up will be really quick, but I can definitely see why maybe they're not getting the results that some people might expect, and why it's still Optic and Shopify at the top. And then obviously, you know, you kind of mentioned better, you know, I won't name, the red team. So the red team obviously is another one of those teams where like it's kind of, you know, the devil's rejects, right? Like you've got Penguin, Suppressed, Trippy, Falcated. So you got a little bit of Sentinels, you got a little bit of former Optic, you got a little bit of former Shopify coming together. It's an interesting roster on paper, right? Because Falcated is like, I don't think he gets enough props for how much he does in terms of just like outputting damage and being alive and being a problem for the other team on the map.
He is unbelievable. I've been saying it since Halo 5. Like I've been saying it over a decade now. I feel like a broken record. I've been saying that he is literally one of the top 10 best players in the game, if not top 5 when he's playing like his best game. He's just so soft spoken and like chill about everything. It's like he doesn't end up getting like the credit he deserves, but he's absolutely like in my opinion at least, he's been a superstar talent for a long time. So anyways, I don't want to cut you off.
No, like by all means, like he definitely is. And it's just like there is a lot of strength on that team, and I'm trying to find the words that don't
That's a Ryan Noob term
from scrims.
That's a Ryan Noob term right there. The strength of the team.
You can tell I spent a year with him, right? There's a lot of strength on that team. I just don't know who leads that team. And maybe Snakebite's right. Maybe it's year 4 of Halo Infinite. They all know how to play the game, but like they all know how to play the game in very different ways, in my opinion. Like Donnie, Suppressed, like he is very much like, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to try to make a play and hopefully my team can capitalize on it. And that could either be a really good playmaking opportunity, or against another team that's ready for it, he's scamming, right? Like, So, whereas Falcated is like, he's putting out so much damage on the map, but he's never the one like G sliding out into mid map and, you know, I found all 4 of them and I'm going to take 2 with me. Like, and neither is Trippy or Penguin. They definitely have their pop off moments. Don't get me wrong. Like we've seen Trippy pop off, we've seen Penguin pop off, but it's not consistent. And I don't know what the direction of that team is. So I think it's going to be another team like Space Station, just the opposite problem. Space Station has a lot of playbook they can use. They just had to figure out which one they want to go with. This team has a lot of play styles, but maybe not a playbook. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Better doesn't come across to me as a team that's like objective strategic masterminds that are sitting up late looking at film and like drawing out like, you know, scrim maps and like heat maps and all that stuff and like dialing the analytics. But they do look at like, again, I really don't want to bring it up every single time, but like they're probably the only team that's angrier than Rebellion in the scene. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if Shopify is like somewhat the leftovers, then Better is like, I don't even know at that point. You know what I mean? Like they're just the forgotten ones. And so they've been playing with like some crazy, you know, passion. They want to remind folks like, hey, like, you know, don't think we're just like a scraped together team. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, they're one of those teams that's like exciting to me. I feel as though, you know, naturally I want to say Rebellion, Optic, Space Station are your top three, and that fourth spot is kind of, you know, I was actually talking to Trey about this last night, coach at TSM. We were just like, yeah, fourth is wide open right now in terms of like you can battle your way and get in there. And then who knows once you're in the top four, right? If you're catching a team and you're hot, whatever, what can happen at that point. But Better, I mean, they're a team that could potentially swing that door shut and be like, nah,
yeah,
top four is locked in. It's us. You know what I mean? So it'd be really interesting to see how the next, you know, few opens heading into the first event kind of go, if they're going to establish themselves as yeah, we're like a top four lock, or if we're going to see, you know, teams kind of contesting for that spot.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to actually share my screen here with the stream so you guys can see. But we've even gotten, let me throw our cams up there. We don't want to deprive you guys of our beautiful faces. Like this is Cloud9 versus the red team, Better, whatever. Who we haven't even talked about, Cloud9 picking up Boo Boo in place of Suspector. So still another roster with good experience, another roster with like really good slaying potential. And going game 5 against Better, right? Like,
yeah,
sure, you can say this is just an open, or like maybe, you know, whatever you want to say to knock this down a peg or two in terms of success. But like, to me, this is just kind of showing the underlying theme of this season, which is going to be anybody could beat anybody on any given day. It just depends on who shows up.
Yeah. Well, so far they've been showing up their top four lock. I mean, Suppress in the chat saying fudging on everybody this year. I mean,
up,
top four is a good spot to be. I can't debate that or you know, can't fault that. And that's the mindset you got to have. You got to have that mindset of just utter confidence, which we've seen.
Yeah.
Luminosity here taking games from Optic. I'm imagining it was a Slayer, but still 3-1 against Optic is a good showing there. Yeah, dude. I mean, I'm surprised, you know, when it comes to like teams. I'm not gonna say Better is overperforming because those are legends on that team, and they've all been players that have been in the top four consistently across the board. I will say though that when you have a scene that's as competitive as it is right now for us, where like only 4 teams can be in the top 4, means some people are going to be getting disappointed. And like, I mean, we got to look at TSM, right? They were, you know, pure ending last season. They were kind of that team that was fighting for that 4th spot. I'm sure that they're not stoked to be getting, you know, top 8, top 6, where they thought they had made the moves to get them into a position to, you know, be that 4th team. They've kind of come out of it a little bit.
And they got 3-0'd by Cloud9. So again, like more props to Cloud9. Like TSM by no means is a weak roster. I think they lost their strongest player from last season in Last Shot, but you still got like, you basically got native red from season 1 just with Cherish instead of Manny. So it's like you've got they got top 3 at Worlds in season 1.
Yeah.
So like you've got a strong foundation there, and I would say Cherish is, you know, on par with Manny in terms of like what he can bring, and he's definitely had pop off moments. I mean, I saw him drop like 40 against us when we played them in this tournament. So like he's not weak by any means. It's just showing again, like I would say this would have been a much closer matchup, and I don't know exactly how those individual maps went, but a 3-0 is still a 3-0. Like that's a pretty confident win.
Yeah, I mean, especially for a Cloud9 team that's not, you know, not necessarily made the biggest moves season by season. They've kind of made like subtle pickups here and there. You know, picking up Manny, I thought was a great pickup, and then obviously now with Boo Boo, I think is a great pickup. But they've slowly made like these like subtle changes to their roster. Nothing like gangbusters. They're not, you know, breaking the bank to bring in the highest, craziest, most famous talent. But they've slowly been like climbing their way up. You know what I mean? In a sense where like that team is legitimately a threat now. Which, you know, I couldn't be happier for folks like Boo Boo, who are just rad dudes who are awesome in the scene. But yeah, I think there's only so many spots, and these teams are, you know, I think every week we're going to see like some shakeup from, you know, the 4 through 12. I feel like any of those teams could be up in 4 or down in 12, and I wouldn't be surprised. I you know, call me biased, whatever. I wouldn't be shocked to see us up there. As a matter of fact, I'm expecting us to be up there, especially with you at the helm. I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, some roster stuff, because I actually had some folks commenting on my stream yesterday, talking about some of the changes that were made. I want to start with us, you know, bringing in Mental, obviously letting Breaking Shot go. I had some folks being like, man, interesting decision, seeing as, you know, the talent that Breaking Shot is in the come up. But
Yeah.
I wanted to tap into your mind a little bit on that decision, how that was made, what was the reasoning behind it. I know Mental's nasty, but I'm sure you're gonna tell the folks as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, you know, for anybody watching right now live, feel free to put a comment or a question in the chat, and we'll be able to see it and we can answer it on stream. So if you have any questions for either Hunter or myself, you know, by all means, let them rip. Yeah, that was a tough one. So Dylan Breaking Shot came in last season. You know, we poached him. He basically beat us, and then we said, okay, we want that, and we made him an offer. He is an incredible player. He was everything that we had hoped for. He's fast. He has a crazy pop off potential. He's a great teammate. He's an absolute workhorse. Like, he's the first one on, last one off every single day. Um, I like I miss having him as a teammate. No, obviously no disrespect to any of my current teammates. I love them. I miss having him as a teammate because he was just like phenomenal. Um, we came into this season very clearly, and I know I talked to you about it actually. The goal this season was to put together a roster that meshed well personality wise, and that could really just vibe together and like hop on and play games together on days off, right? Like, not play Halo, but, you know, play whatever game, whatever flavor of the month game. Right now it's a repo, right? So like play whatever and like really just enjoy being teammates. And that was something I felt like our roster last season kind of lacked a little bit. You know, we did have some like team game nights and bonding kind of stuff that we tried to implement, but the natural chemistry wasn't as strong as I had hoped and had wanted. And you look at a team like Pure, where like they just rode the high of natural chemistry and last shots backpack, and it's like, sorry, unfair diss right there. That I just look, I'm gonna keep gassing up last shot because he's so good.
I'm clipping it.
So I'm sure I'm going to hear about that one. Yes, I'm already doesn't want to scrim us. So I lost my train of thought. So when we came into this season, right? And like Dylan was like, he was our fourth, like we knew the core three of Spartan, Huss, and Precision. Precision wanted to play with Huss. Huss wanted to play with Precision. Huss wanted to play with Tyler. Tyler wanted to play with Huss. Tyler wanted to play with, you know, the trio worked. They wanted to play with each other, and they were playing with each other already. And then all those off-season tournaments got announced, and like Huss wanted to keep playing with Breaking Shot, so they pulled him into the fold, and he fit perfectly, right? Like personalities were meshing well. He fit into the, you know, the group chat well. Like everything, vibes were riding high. Everything was great, and then nothing bad happened. It's just Mental became available. And I tried to explain this to him, and I don't know if I can ever like fully explain it to anybody who, you know, isn't part of that relationship. But like, obviously Precision and Mental have a stronger relationship. They teamed together on Shopify in season 1 or season 2 at some point. So they have chemistry. They're both from Gears. They have chemistry from that. Obviously, I'm completely biased, and Mental is, you know, a little brother to me. So I knew that having him was a tremendous, you know, upside for us. And I think that the tough part is when you see a roster change happen, you think, okay, well, what did that player do or what went wrong? Right. And in this rare instance, Dylan Breaking Shot did nothing wrong. He was a phenomenal teammate. He was a phenomenal player. He didn't play poorly. He didn't do anything bad. He didn't throw a tantrum in the group chat. He didn't literally nothing wrong. It's just, and I told him too, like, if it wasn't mental, if it was any other player in the game, like it could have been Formal knocking on our door, it wouldn't have been a conversation. But because it was mental, I knew what
It
that
better
would
have been a
do.
conversation with Formal. Are you kidding me?
I mean, no, because
Bro,
like
I'm dropping everybody's droppable on the roster as soon as Formal comes up. Like Formal says
not,
sup, and I'm just like, who do you want me to drop? Like that's the next question.
it's the point is like the point is that it's because of the relationships that Mental already had with multiple members on the team and what that extra just chemistry out of game, that dynamic could bring to the roster, we felt like was a edge up on what we had currently, which was still forging some of those relationships. And on paper, like this was part of the debate. Like on paper, I think Dylan mechanically is probably a little bit faster and a little bit better than Mental. I think Mental's playstyle is different. It's much more supportive role, I guess,
Like
if you
big
want to
picture.
give it a title. Yeah, it's much more big picture. And that definitely is something that we also needed. Like we have enough people who can just throw their bodies on the line for the fight. We need somebody who's like setting us up for if the fight goes wrong, we're in a good spot still. So yeah, I mean, it was a really tough decision. It was something that we talked about and didn't take lightly, and it literally came down to like it's mental. Like it's just
Yeah.
that relationship that multiple of us have with him makes this roster change make sense for us. And if it had been anyone else,
Not a lot of players. Not a lot of players you would make a move for like that. But I mean, I don't know. Good thing I'm not the Halo manager, bro. Because one conversation with Formal, and all of a sudden be calling him Spartan the stray dog, out on the streets. Sorry, dog. We got a Formal coming in. But yeah, I think the rapport is there.
I think I learned last season though that like that approach doesn't always work, right? And truth be told, there are a lot of teams out there with a lot more resources than what we have, right? Like you look at somebody like Shopify or somebody like Optic, they have more resources, like even just clout, like they have more clout. And that is an alluring, temptation to any player. If you get a call from Optic, you answer the call, right? But like it's one of those things where last season we saw when we would bring in high tier talent, they would either A, pop off with us and then get poached, or B, they wouldn't mesh well. And then you just have clashing of heads. You don't grow as much as you should, and you kind of plateau rather than really being able to utilize everybody's talents. And so I didn't want that to happen this season. I wanted that natural chemistry to bleed through and lead us to those top fours like Pure had. So that was the goal. And, we'll see if it pans out. Right now, I could see a lot of people, potentially saying it's not working. We should have kept Breaking Shot or whatever. But I'm still absolutely confident in this roster. I've seen what we can do when we decide we want to do it. It's just a matter of making that the consistent, like eliminating the bad habits that everybody has from past teams or matchmaking or whatever it is, and focusing on like, hey, let's get everybody on the same page and play some freaking Halo.
Yeah, we're building towards like sustained excellence, I would say, building towards something that's like more lasting. I was on Shycast last week. I talked about that. He said like, how's the team feeling after some disappointing finishes? And I said literally like, we got a squad where everyone's homies. You don't get that every day. Like I know for a fact the boys are like going back over, let's see what like went right or wrong, but it's not just like a blame game or tear people down game. It's like, no, like we're all boys outside the game. So it makes us having hard conversations easier. You know what I mean? We're able to like get to the core of it without worrying about hurting someone's feelings because everyone knows that they're looking out for each other. So, I mean, me, when we were going over roster potentials and you brought up this potential roster, I was like, dude, yes. You know what I mean? Like, it's like some of the best vibes that we've had in rotation in like our complexity family all back together. You know what I mean? To have Tyler, to have Precision back. In addition to having Huss already, and then bringing in Mental, who you have a lot of rapport with, who you have championship pedigree with, like, you couldn't really like write it up better. So now it's just the reality of putting in the work to achieve like the ceiling or close to the ceiling that we know is possible with the team.
Yeah, I think we have all the pieces of the puzzle for the picture that I'm wanting to create. It's just putting the pieces together. And that is what's proving to be challenging right now. But it's not an impossible task. It's just there's almost like it seems like a downside, and maybe I'm just, talking out of my ass, right? But like, I think because they care about each other on like a different level, like not just, I'm trying to win and these are the people I guess I'm doing it with. But like, they almost translate that in the game, and they're over helping each other. And I think I'll call him out because we had a long conversation about it. But like, that's something Spartan, I'm working with him on. Like, Spartan is a dog when he wants to be. Like, Spartan can go toe to toe with anybody in the game, and I'll put my money on Spartan when he's unlocked. Right now, I think he's locked himself up a little bit. I think he's trying to overhelp and overcompensate for plays that might not be good out of other teammates, or like, you see your teammate die across the map, but he's screaming, he's one shot, jumping up top gold. And then you're like, instead of making your play, you're just staring at top gold, hoping you can pick off the one shot. And I'm talking to him about like, hey, we need to clean that up. Like there's a concept in solo queue League of Legends that I used to have all the time pre Gears of War, was like, don't save the idiot, right? Like if somebody's making an idiotic play, it's not your job to save the idiot and try to make the best out of it. You go, that was an idiotic play. I'm making my play that's going to save us from the dumb play you just made.
Further snowball, yeah.
Exactly. And I think in Halo, it's so fast paced that you need to be quicker at recognizing, like, hey, that guy just made, questionable play, or me going into that makes me the idiot. I need to not do that. And I think once that, like, I think that's probably our biggest flaw. And once we fix that, like, the rest of the stuff is easy. Like, we can gun with anybody in the game right now. Like, we've seen that in scrims, we've seen that in tournaments. Like, we can shoot back. We just aren't playing tight enough to make it matter. So we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there, but I think with the culture you're establishing, it's far more likely that we'll get there fast. You know what I mean? Because we're not looking for who's the problem, who do we need to drop, what changes we have to make. It's like, no, this is our crew. This is who we're crewed up with. This is who we're going to go to war with. So like, let's make this thing as good as it can possibly be. Obviously, we're in a very, we talk about not being some crazy high rolling team, but we're also in a very blessed position where we are a partner team. We do have, support from HCS. We are like in the mix. So it is still a favorable destination to be with Complexity, but man, we're stoked with the boys that we got and, the potential that's there.
Yeah, I have the utmost faith in this roster. I'm excited for this season. We're starting off on the wrong foot, but once we're finding our pace and our groove, like it's going to be scary. And I think, that is what I'm most excited about. We talked about earlier, like, the 4th through 12th is like a massive toss up, but I'm excited because I think once we reach our potential, we're not even in that 4th through 12th conversation. Assuming that we do our jobs, right? Like we won't be in that conversation. It'll be like, okay, like what's everyone that we've already beaten this tournament? What are they competing for? We're going to fight Optic and SR. And maybe that's a cocky approach, but like that's my mindset going into it.
You gotta have belief.
I gotta have that belief.
So for you, obviously having the best finger on the pulse of the team, like what do you think is a sustainable position to be in with the current landscape of the teams and the talent that's out there? Like, where's your mindset at for what's acceptable this season in terms of land placings and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the potential. Like, we could win the first event if we actualize on the potential that we have as a team. I think that's a tall task in the amount of time that we have left, especially with the last 2 weeks kind of being a setback. But I think that the potential is there. So, it could be anything from we win every event to we don't do as well as we want the first event, but we start, kind of getting to the point we want to be at by event number 2, by, DreamHack Dallas or so on and so forth. I definitely have high expectations. I think this roster is a better version of what we had last year. So I expect us to do better in terms of placements. That's my goal. My goal is to win a championship this year, if not multiple. But obviously, year 4 of Halo, the competition is tough. Everybody knows how to play the game well. And so, and then there's so much talent, right? Like, again, shout out to Luminosity for like that team being so strong and so quickly. And I think now they might even have a new coach backing them up. So that, could increase their growth. But yeah, the goal is to do better than last season and to bring home 1 trophy at least. So
it's crazy to talk about the talent level of Halo, and like we kind of gone through a lot of the placings from the last Open. We haven't even talked about like what LATAM is putting on the table, what EU Halo is putting on the table. Like there is like a lot of international talent as well that also believe, you know what I mean? Like I know like Sika and those guys are not stoked to just kind of like have fallen out of the conversation after, you know, Legend and the quadrant situation and all that. But like there's talent out there that could come in and get a top 6, get a top 4, you know what I mean? So as like a Halo, you know, it's fun to get to be just like a fanboy now and like get to be a viewer and watch and support. As someone that's just like watching the events now and like following the storylines, like there's never been a more exciting time to be like engaged in the HCS scene and to see these teams go to war, because it feels like there's not going to be any throwaway matches, you know what I mean? When we get to LAN, like when we go to these pool play, like I'm gonna be like keyed in on every single pool play match that's going down, because like the teams are all like so competitive at the moment, and so it's really really exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even looking at like scrims right now, right? And again, it's scrims, it's online. There's a lot of asterisks to this, but I'll go ahead and share my screen for this too. Like they're like right here, Luminosity taking a map off Shopify. Yeah, they're down 6-1 in the scrim, but like winning a Strongholds live fire against Shopify, who like are a very strong live fire team, at least from what I've seen. That we haven't taken a map off Shopify. Like that to me is just showing like there's so much potential in this talent on these rosters that this season's going to be such a crazy mix of storylines.
And shout out to Yaxon and Avicii, who have like, you know, been kind of in the trenches the first 3 years, to now be on like a team with like a legitimate salary, to have like new motivation to want to show up and show out and perform. Like there was a different kind of fire when I first got signed to Complexity. I was like, yeah, like I've never wanted it more, you know. It's for these guys, it's like they put in 3 years to have this type of moment. You know, they don't want to like let it slip, so they're trying to maximize. They're putting in that work, scrimming against Shopify. Dude, look at like all the teams. Just TSM obviously looking good.
Like 3 and 4 with Space Station. Like
you
know, like that. It's just this season is anybody's season. Like super team for formal, like aside, Shopify success aside, like this is anybody's season, and that's what makes it exciting.
Here's a fun question when it comes to scrims. Who's not playing who?
So I believe I've heard that Space Station and Optic won't play each other, which like I get, right? Like I'm sure
Shopify's in there too, right? Like Shopify won't play Optic, or I think
maybe I haven't seen them scrim each other, so probably I could be wrong. Like I try to keep track of like who's playing who, but you know it's anybody's game. Team that you were talking about European teams, so here's like we can talk about Team Nemesis. That's another roster that's really exciting on paper, and like here they are up. I would say a lot of people would maybe consider it an upset. You know, it's online, so there's a lot of ping in play here with a EU team scrimming an NA team. But like
old quadrant plus Woodham, like that's a sick lineup.
So sick.
You know what I mean?
So
like
sick.
that roster is nuts.
I'm a big Woodham fan. Like there was a point where I was like, all right, how do I get this kid in North America to be on Complexity? Like what strings do I have to pull?
Hoops do I have to jump through?
Like, literally, I was talking to my bosses like, you know, before this roster came together. So like, if any of my players see this, don't worry. Like I wasn't trying to replace you. Like I was like, okay, so like what's that visa process like? Like how do you import a player? Like hypothetically, no, I'm a big Woodham fan, you know, mouse and keyboard supremacy, and it's sick to, you know, see him having success and being on such a strong team. So I am very hopeful that they can do well. Obviously, slightly less well than what we do, but I still want to see them do well.
Yeah. I mean, so many of those European cats are such sweethearts too. It's like hard to root against them. You're like, I got to beat you right now, but man, like you're so cool. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Let's talk after the series, because I like you too much talking to you right now before this series. So yeah, it's a crazy time to be watching HCS, to be plugged in. Man, Nick, it's freaking fun to do this with you, bro. Episode 1, opening break.
Yeah,
I think we should take like a viewer question or two before we wrap things up. Anybody in the chat have a question for myself or Nick? Patty earlier said, what's it like to be a GOAT? I'm going to ask that to you, Nick, because you are, in a lot of circles, would consider you the GOAT coach, especially for Gears. What's it like to just be the GOAT and wake up and be a GOAT?
Stressful, man. It's stressful. No, it's funny. Like maybe this is too personal to share, but I've been working a lot this year on myself and not defining my self-worth based on accomplishments. So I'd always appreciate the GOAT compliments and stuff like that, but I don't look at myself like that. I look at myself as it's I have a lot of goals that I want to achieve, and I can still be a good coach even if I don't achieve them. So just giving my all and giving my best regardless of the outcomes, and walking away with my head held high in that regard. But you know, I had also had to learn to lose. So you know,
Yeah.
that was a different experience for me. But yeah, no, it's I appreciate all the support that people give, and I hope that, you know, we can make everybody who's supporting Complexity Halo really proud this year.
Rhino was asking details on the logo change. I could speak to that. I mean, sometimes you just got to go back to your roots, bro. And with Complexity, you know, for a while we had the star, we had the blue thing, we had different ownership, we had all kinds of stuff going on. But with the current state of the org, I think Jason really just wanted to get back to the core of who makes Complexity what. And there's a lot of like, dude, when I see this old school Complexity logo, bro, I think back to like some of those COD squads and like Ross were just like dominant in their sport. And it really speaks to the emphasis, the focus on our esports teams, and like, no, like we're here to make moves, and we're here to have an impact in whatever scene we're involved in. So throwing it back to that OG Complexity roster. What event are you most looking forward to this year? Also see y'all at Texas Events and Worlds. Nick, what event are you looking forward to?
Patty, see you there, man. Patty's the GOAT. He's always in the crowd, like cheering for our team. So I always appreciate that. Event I'm looking forward to the most this year. I mean, obviously Worlds, because I felt like last year Worlds, we didn't do what we want, like we set out to do. And so I want to like change that this year. I want to like, you know, achieve something great at Worlds. I would love to get a ring. Obviously the events in the backyard are always fun. So Arlington, DreamHack Dallas is going to be a blast because DreamHack's awesome. I don't know where the one event that hasn't been announced is, so I don't know what to look forward to there. Utah is always sick. I don't know, man. All the events are great. Like that's the really awesome thing about like the way HCS does the events and is now letting like partner teams host the events. It feels like every event is unique. Like you're not just following like the MLG blueprint every single time. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
the merch booth is always going to be over there no matter what the venue is, and the stage is always going to be like, it's different every single time because you have those different creative minds coming in, but with still the same organizational expertise that like Esports Engine brings to the table. And so it's like every event is going to be sick, but probably Worlds is going to be the one that's my, you know, my favorite. It's Worlds, right? Like
we got unfinished business for sure. I'm looking forward to DreamHack. I'm a big nerd. I love all the other games and other booths, and like just like feeling like you're part of something bigger than just yourself and your scene. So I'm really looking forward to that. I got a question. What time are we meeting up at the Silent Planet X Invent Animate show after the event Saturday? I mean, that's a Dallas. That's a you question, Nick, because that's a Dallas based thing.
Are they in Dallas on the same weekend? Surely not, right?
That would be crazy. Schisma, can you confirm that? Like, is Planet, and because if that's the case, that's a riot. We just roll through after a day of dominating.
April 19th. Is that the weekend of the event? Please no. Please no. It really is.
Oh my god.
Are you kidding me? Alex.
He does it on purpose, dude. Like he went to that one event with us, Kansas City, hung out, had a blast, and then every event after that, he's like been on tour at the exact time that it's happening, so he can't go to any events. So now he's done the ultimate and scheduled his tour around it. He clearly he wants to go to the event, so that's got to be what it is. That's crazy.
All right, so here's the plan. We go undefeated Friday and Saturday so that we have a later match time on Sunday, and then I can be out later on Saturday night to see Silent Planet and Invent, and then you know, if I'm still back to the hotel by like 1, I should be good, right? It's still like 8 hours of sleep.
Oh yeah.
That's the plan. So we just got to win everything. All good.
You got to win out, and then if we lose, we're gonna be too upset to go. So it's win or nothing here in this situation.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's God, I can't believe that lines up. I swear, events are always like lined up with. I'm a WWE nerd. I've been a wrestling fan since like a little kid, so. Like they're always lined up with like WWE pay-per-views or with like UFC pay-per-views that I want to see. And finally I was like, okay, cool. Like there's nothing big during the first event. Great. Not missing anything. Of course I am. I'm missing the homie Alex playing his show in Dallas. Oh, that's rough.
Who's the best player on complexity? Nick, you're not allowed to answer that question. Obviously, too close to it. I don't know if I'm going to go ahead and say who's the best player. I'm going to say for me, what player I'm most excited about watching is probably going to be Precision, having him back. Just such a crazy X factor, such an insane talent. The fact that he just fell in our lap, I'm really excited to see what he's going to do this season for us and go to work. Obviously, I will also put Sparty in that conversation where, like, you could tell me, yeah, Spartan's probably the best player in the game, and I'm like, checks out. When Sparty is fired up, motivated, angry, like he is absolutely insane. So yeah, those are my guys. I mean, I love our roster, bro. I love our roster. I'm ready for us to have that breakthrough moment. And I don't mind if it doesn't happen in these open cups. We can wait till land to have our moment. I'm cool with that too.
Yeah, I mean, I told the team as long as we qualify for pool play, so I don't have to wake up at like 7 a.m. on Friday, I'm good.
We don't want to get in the way of Nick's beauty sleep. We don't want an angry coach Ashes.
No, it's rough out here. Like, I'm already not beautiful, and this is on like 10 hours. So I do have a question for you though. Like, I know we're at our hour-ish limit, but I think it's important because the team's probably going to be scrimming it here soon, and I need to stall so I don't have to be a part of it. Assault neutral bomb.
Oh man.
Right? Like, we've got assault neutral bomb in the HCS rotation. We're going to give hot takes right now with assault neutral bomb, starting with Hunter JJX. What do you think of assault neutral bomb?
I think it feels like a V.5. Like, I'm not going to sit here and write it off and say it's like not feasible at all, but I think there are some pretty major issues. Obviously, they manifest the worst on Fortress, but I will also say, like, Aqua to me isn't perfect. I think Aqua is playable in its current state, but I think that it could use some more time in the oven. There's certain things subtly about Neutral Bomb and Infinite that I'm not the biggest fan of. For example, in old school Halo, when you planted the bomb, it automatically killed everyone that was in the base, like helping put that thing together. So it's like you had to reset and regain control every time. Whereas in this version of it, you can plant it and literally everyone can survive. You can still be perfectly in the base, set up to spawn. You sit on Aqua a lot because the map is basically 3 spawns, like flag, util, fridge. You'll see a team get control and just be spawning the other team in the fridge, basically endlessly. And I feel like that's a little bit of an oversight. And then for Fortress, I don't even know what the solution is, man, but we've seen, so the analytics don't really lie. And there was a stat that got posted. I think it was Tools posted it earlier where like one team got outslayed by like 20 or 30 kills in one of those game types and tied it 0-0. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, that's probably not the best look. And then as a viewer, it just kind of crushes the momentum. Series will be hyped and then you'll see game 3 or game 4 Fortress Bomb come up and you're just like, so I guess like all of the momentum is chalked at this point because we're going to be watching this game type for the next 30 minutes. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to completely write it off and say it's like trash or anything. I think it just needs some work. Maybe Fortress needs like a bigger arming point. Maybe you make it like the entire top plat of their base so that you really can, or maybe you add some more spawns that are like outside of the corner. So you're not just constantly spawning in like such a close vicinity to just be able to throw nades at the bomb. I just think there's a little bit of work that needs to be done, but I'm not going to write it off. I think Aqua it's cool. I like the new jumps and stuff, jump in the window and stop it. I don't know. What about you? You've been scrimming, you've been watching a lot more than me. Is it as painful in scrims as it is like watching it in tournaments as well, or how's that kind of been going?
So I said it to the team actually before we got on today that like every time I load into a assault neutral bomb on Fortress, I'm like, great, I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes of my time for nothing. Because like I know it's going to end in a draw, right? Like especially in matchmaking. I think the main problem that I see is either the bomb takes too long to be armed, or there's too many lines of sight to the arming area. And like you were saying, like with both of the maps that it's on, both Aqua and Fortress, which like are very similarly laid out in terms of their spawns, right? Like it's left or right of the flag area. There's just Fortress is a better example because there's much fewer things to kind of duck behind when you're arming it. And so whether they spawn, over towards the BR and Spiral, or whether they spawn over in like Snipe Elbow, you're going to get shot like within a second or two of the other team spawning, or you're going to get naded and there's nothing you can do about it. And like, that's why it's so hard. Like you basically have to 4 dead them perfectly and immediately start planting and
And
then
have everyone in the base so that you can cycle it if the bomb guy dies. It's just like,
yeah, and
it's
like
insane.
be like fully aware of like you have somebody blocking spiral, so you're spawning them all snipe and like almost pre-nading it so that they're spawning up one shot. Like it's really hard to pull off, and it's impossible in matchmaking because nobody uses their microphones. That's a whole different topic. So it's like it's it's just not. I agree with you. It's not finished. It's not a finished product. I think the idea is cool. I like that there's a bomb mode. I like that they're teasing us with search and destroy, and we can talk about that next week and kind of go maybe into a
Yeah.
deeper dive. So if you guys want to hear us talk about that, make sure you tune in the same time next week. But um, yeah, it's just I really hope that S&D is more polished and the maps are laid out because I know they're doing like the Forge Hub contest for it to make it like really unique for that mode. And then fingers crossed it works out because I like bomb modes, I like planting, I like round base modes too.
Mhm.
It just feels like such an uphill battle.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's unfortunate because like the last patch, the last game type rotation switch was like across the board a dub in my mind, minus Fortress Bomb. You know what I mean? It's like
Bring back Argyle.
You see the game types that got brought in. You see like Kali coming in from H5 playing so well, like so much fun to play Slayer and Flag on that map. Obviously refining the other game types, adding the jumps, nerfing the shock. Like there's so many things that I'm just like, oh, W. And then it's like bomb. Like it just makes matchmaking painful. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
But I would say like that's a good place to be where it's like the whole community seems to be unified on, hey, this is one thing we need to take a look at. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We don't have like all these opinions all over the place. They took off the shotguns, all that stuff. They did so many things to make this year unique and also like a progression of what's made HCS game type so great. Let's just take a look at bomb and like we'll be good to go for the season. You know what I mean? Hopefully we do it soon because we got these open still. We got tournaments coming up. Like you want people to practice on the proper game types. And I mean, worst case, you just cut it. I mean, what are there like 21 or 22, 23 game types right now? It's like insanity. Back in the day, we had 11 game types back in the day. Scrims were 2 hours and you're done. Bro, like, what do you like?
Bro, it is 20 maps and modes. 20. If you play everything in a scrim, you're playing 20 maps and modes. And like, at what point do we go like, hey, like, okay, here's the veto system? Because like, it really is. Like, I've told the team, like, okay, like, let's do 15 maps. And then if we're feeling it after that, but like, it is unrealistic to scrim 20 maps and modes back to back to back to back to back, which is
that's
like
a full shift working.
Yeah, like bro, all of like Halo players are so ADHD that they just want to go, and like you don't get the chance to learn and grow from the experience you just had. It's just like, great, won that Aqua, don't know how, let's load into this live fire. And it's like,
yeah.
What are you getting from that?
My brain is mush after that.
And by the end of it, like you're so tired that the last 5 maps are usually like a waste of time anyways. So it's like, there needs to be like a veto system or something. If we're going to have this many maps and modes, I'm completely cool with that. Just like, let me have a little chess match with the other team's coach before we get on stage. You know what I mean? Like,
that'd be sick.
Let's make this interesting.
Yeah, that'd be super sick. Honestly, I'm all for vetoes and maps and modes. I think the pushback is like, well, then only the favorites are going to get played. And I'm like, well, then make better maps and modes if only so many of them are getting picked, But just for the added level of strategy, I think veto would be great with this many, because the reality is like no team, especially by the first event, in my opinion, no team is going to be perfectly buttoned up on all 20 plus of those game types. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if you were a big analytics guy, you could go into the first event being like, hey, we know what game types you guys are good at. We know which ones you guys have either A, haven't played a lot in scrims, or B, are weaker at, and we're going to try to expose you on those. That's a whole different layer. But
it's also super rough as a team too, because like you can be really good at 16 out of the 20. But if the RNG gods are not on your side and your series to advance out of groups is, 4 out of the 5 maps are the 4 ones you're bad at, like,
yeah,
all right, like you're screwed. Meanwhile, like in Gears, like we would have an auto ban. We never scrimmed our auto ban because it was our auto ban. We banned it every single time. And that creates a storyline for like casters and analyst desks to talk about. And if our backs were against the wall, we could be like, screw it, let's not ban our auto ban and see how we do on it, because what else do we have to lose? So I don't know. It seems like a win-win on all fronts, other than whoever has to type into the rule book, because you got to add a couple pages of typing there. But I don't know.
Yeah, That being said, yeah, always interested to talk about. Dang, we've been up for 120. Time flies when you're hanging with the homies, man. I told you though, Nick, I was like, if we get on this show, it's just gonna be us blabbering on. We're gonna have too much fun with each other because you're my boy. So appreciate you. Just so you guys know, back home watching in the chat and whatnot, like this is a fully Ash's idea. He was like, hey, we gotta get on a mic and talk Halo together, and I was obviously all about it. So that being said, Nick, why don't you let folks know what you're up to, where they can find you? Let's get a vibe check on Ashes.
A vibe check on Ashes. So on Twitter at thy Ashes. That's pretty much the only place I'm active. Make sure you follow Complexity and all of our beautiful sponsors. You can see them down in the corner. Yeah, it's awesome. I love being able to talk to you and talk Halo and expand my knowledge and share my knowledge. So always a good time. Thank you to Complexity for letting us, trusting me with being able to come onto the channel with the bro and just talk. So this is going to be a weekly thing, assuming that everyone likes it and we're having a good time, which I'm having a good time. But more importantly, let them know where you're at.
Yeah, Hunter JJX on Twitch, Twitter, streaming Halo full time. I'm live every single day, usually starting around 5 a.m. PST. Again, shout out to Complexity. I mean, to be with the squad for year 4 couldn't be a better home. So excited to be able to give back some more and put together some more content. Yeah, Hunter JJX and everything. Justin UTW on Instagram, but I mainly post like music stuff over there. It's like a different person. I don't know.
Who's that guy?
Yeah, and then also like complexity glitch, some complexity clutch. You gotta shout out the product. Obviously, be sure to check out your glitch energy complexity flavor. I think it's
code complexity.
Oh, wow, I was gonna use my code, but I guess code complexity is fine. That works for me.
Or your code. What's your code?
I think my code is 100JJX.
I don't get a code.
I believe it's 100JJX.
I just use code complexity or your code. Depends on who I'm feeling. Depends on if you piss me off that day.
Be sure to follow the Complexity Halo and Complexity Twitters, as well as the Complexity Twitch, which they so graciously allowed us to use. I think we did a good job. I think they'll let us use it again, Nick.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance that people can mark their calendars for next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Central. Yeah.
Sounds good. That being said, always go out of your way to leave a positive impact in the world. Let's leave the Halo scene a better place than we found it. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next show. Bye, guys.
Yeah.